There is a tension that I have experienced when talking with God, and perhaps you have experienced this tension as well, that revolves around the idea, who am I to give God advice about what to do in my life? And that who am I phrase really has two different components for me. The first of all is, who am I in terms of my intelligence? God is so much smarter, so much wiser. He has all knowledge. Yeah, who am I to give him advice? Hey, God, I want this. You should be doing this for me. I'd like to see this happen. Wouldn't it be better just to say, God, you're smarter than me. I'm not going to ask for anything. Just do what you think is right. And the other sense of the who am I that creates tension for me is, who am I because I'm really not that good? Like, who am I to ask God to do so? If I was Mother Teresa, if I was someone who is really sacrificing and really good, but I have this realization that I'm not that good, and so who am I to ask God to move things for what I want? And that who am I can be quite a challenge, and yet Jesus gave one teaching specifically designed to challenge us to ask God for things. And when we take this teaching seriously, it has the potential to profoundly impact not only our relationship with God and the conversations that we have with God, but to profoundly impact the way we see ourselves as well. Hi everybody, I'm Greg from Heart Tools, where we make it simple to build great relationships. And today I want to introduce one simple step that you can take that has the potential of transforming your relationship with God. And the simple step is found in a teaching that Jesus gave in the Gospel of Luke in the 11th chapter, where his disciples ask him, hey, teach us how to pray. And he starts by giving what's known as the Lord's Prayer or the model prayer. But then right after that, he gives this word picture about prayer that is really confusing and strange. He says, when you pray, imagine this. Imagine that you have a friend come to visit you in town and you don't have enough food to be a good host. And so you go to your next door neighbor, it's late at night, you knock on the door and you say, hey, I've got this visitor, I need 3 loaves of bread from you. And the neighbor says, stop bothering me, the doors are locked, the lights are out, everyone's asleep, you're a bit of a nuisance, please go away. And Jesus says, but if you continue to knock, and if you continue to be a pest and continue to be a nuisance, you will eventually get bread from your neighbor, not because he really cares about you or wants to give you bread, but he uses this phrase, because of your shameless audacity, you will eventually get the bread from him. And it's a really confusing picture about prayer, particularly if you already have this tension, like, who am I to ask God for something? Because in this picture, the answer to that, Jesus seems to be saying, is who you are is you're a nuisance. That when you pray, think about the fact God really doesn't want to give you what you want. He's already in his house with the people who were important to him. You're an inconvenience. But if you keep pestering and pestering and pestering, then because of your shameless audacity, God will eventually say yes and give you what you want. And then he says these famous words. He says, so ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. And Jesus seems to be saying that the secret to prayer, to talking to God and asking him for something and getting what you want, is not being wise enough to ask for the right things. It's not being good enough that God wants to respond. It seems like he's saying that the secret to powerful prayer is simply don't take no for an answer, right? Have shameless audacity and keep asking and asking and asking till you get what you want. Now, that's not a very encouraging or inspiring picture of God that would cause me to want to pray more. And it seems to create a selfish, adversarial posture towards God that, hey, I know I'm a nuisance, but I want this, and I don't care what you want, God. I'm not going to take no for an answer till I get this. So that feels like a selfish posture. And then I also wonder in that picture, what does God get out of this picture other than a bunch of bratty kids who want what they want when they want it and are going to keep, pestering him until he finally says, okay, I'll give it to you if you just go away. And on the surface, this picture seems to really make no sense at all. And I think this is one of those teachings of Jesus, and there's quite a few of them, that make absolutely no sense until you put it into practice. And it's putting into practice where you get the insight and the wisdom. And I think if we put this teaching into practice, there are three things that we can learn and discover that will dramatically impact not only the conversations that we have with God, but also the way we view ourselves. So when I decided, okay, this is what Jesus says about asking God for things, I'm going to put it into practice. And I'm going to test this, right? I have a little bit of a skeptic streak in me, and I didn't like this teaching, so I think I was also feeling a little bratty. So I just decided I'm just going to ask God for $1 million. I'm just going to put what Jesus says to the test. I'm going to ask for $1 million over and over and over again, and I'm not going to stop until I get $1 million. And so that's what I did. And I just started every spare moment of the day, I would ask God for $1 million, before meals. Hey, God, can I have $1 million? Wake up in the middle of the night. Can I have $1 million? And I'm just going to put this teaching to the test. And I think it was about 2.5 weeks of constantly, every time I had a spare moment, saying, hey, God, can I have $1 million? That something happened that was pretty profound to me. I didn't get $1 million. I got something else. I got so bored, I couldn't stand it. Like, I couldn't ask for $1 million one time. And I really, like I just said, you know what, God, I don't care about $1 million. Give me $1 million. Don't give me $1 million. I don't care. It's not important to me. And so the first thing I learned in trying to put this in practice was I was perfectly willing to hear no for an answer to the request for $1 million. It wasn't hard for me to hear that no for an answer. So I thought, well, let me change this up a bit. I was being a little bit bratty. Let me pray for some things that I think really are more important to me. And so I had some things. I was a pastor at the time, and I was working, and I had some career goals, and I had some goals for the church. And I think these things are good goals. These are important. Let me pray for these things, that God will answer these prayers. And let me keep knocking, keep praying, and not take no for an answer until I hear a yes on these things. So I started praying for those things all the time. And once again, it didn't take too long for me to get really bored in those prayers. And that was the second thing I learned. The second thing I learned was there are a whole lot of things in life for which I am perfectly willing to hear no for an answer to when it comes to my conversations with God. And that led to the third discovery, which was the one that was pretty transforming. And that was this. I realized that I had no idea at all what was so important to me, so central to who I am and my purpose in life, that I could ask God for it every single day and keep coming back and not take no for an answer, even if it took years of praying the same prayer. And so I kept at it, and I kept, trying to figure out what's so important to me that I'm not going to take no for an answer for it. And so one day, when I was talking with God, I remember saying, God, I really want to learn how to love others well. And that's something I just really like to master. And I'd really love to learn it well enough so that I could teach others how to love well. And I remember when I was talking to God about that, there was just a fire that was burning inside me. And I realized, oh my goodness, this is something that I'm going to be praying every day for the rest of my life. And whenever I talk to God, I'll be talking about this, and I will not hear no for an answer on this one. And when that happens, when you find something so central, so important, so core to you that you could keep asking God for it day after day after day and not take no for an answer, what happens is this posture of who am I to ask God for something transforms into the posture of this is who I am, right? When I'm having a conversation with God, I can have it with God, this is who I am, right? You got to give me this because this is who I am. If you don't say yes to this, there's really no reason for me to be here. And that also really helps us understand what God gets out of this. Because at first I was thinking Jesus is giving this teaching where we just become bratty children who want what we want when we want it. But what God gets out of this is conversations with his kids who know who they are, who know what's important to them. He gets to have conversations with them about the things that are most central to their heart. Have you ever wanted to really connect with someone? Maybe you go home for the holidays to talk to your parents, or maybe your adult kids come to talk to you, or maybe you are visiting with a college friend you haven't seen for ages, and you really want to connect. You really want an important, deep relationship, and you just end up talking about the weather or talking about sports, and you go away feeling a little bit unsatisfied. Well, I don't think God wants to spend the rest of your life talking to you about the weather. I think what he wants is profound conversations about the things that matter most to you. But for that to happen, you have to know what it is that you won't take no for an answer to. And so here's the simple step that I would encourage you to practice with this video, and that's simply to sit down and make a list of what are the things you think are so important to you that you could talk to God about it every day and keep talking and keep asking and keep knocking until you hear a yes, because you will not take no for an answer for that. And just sit down and write a list. It may be 3 things for you, it may be 10 things, but make that list and then start talking to God about those things every day. And let me encourage you to pay attention to 3 things as you talk to God about the things on your list. The first is pay attention to the difference between things you think you should want and things you really do want, right? Because sometimes we put things on our list, we think, oh, this should be an important thing to me. And yet, as you talk to God about it day after day after day, you kind of become bored because you realize, I really don't care about that. And I should care about that. Well, the reality is we can't all care about everything, right? And so you may say, I want to impact the homeless, right? So you start praying about that and you realize, oh man, this is really boring. But then you pray about helping with inner city schools and something just lights up in you, right? And you go, okay, I found the thing that I cared about, and it's different from all the things I thought I should care about. So pay attention, because some of the things on your list are going to be things at first that you think you should want, but you really don't want. And that's okay, because you're a unique person with a unique purpose. The second thing I would encourage you to do as you talk to God about this list of things that are important to you is to pay attention to what's beneath the request, right? So for example, maybe you start out saying, you know what, I really do want $1 million. Like, that's really all I care about, right? And so you pray for that for a while. And then as you're talking to God about that, you realize there's something beneath that, and that is that you feel stuck. And what you really want is not $1 million. What you want is you want choices, right? And so you may talk to God about feeling stuck, and you want to have more choices, you want to have more options, and so you pray about that for a while. And then you realize, wait, there's something beneath that. It's not just that I want choices, I want this choice. And right now I don't have that choice, right? This is what's important to me, and I can talk about this with God every day until that happens. And it's sort of an excavation, right? It's sort of a process of keep going down and down and down till you find the core of that thing that really makes it central to who you are. And the third thing that I would suggest you do is pay attention because there are times where even though you think, I will not take no for an answer for this, you're going to hear a no. And it's going to be a final no. And that happened with my wife and I. When my wife is someone who was just born to be a mom. That was the only thing she cared about, only thing she cares about. Like, she just knew her whole life, all she wanted to do was be a mom. And that was her on her knock knock list. That's what we call it. This list of things I won't take no for an answer. This was on her knock knock list, is that she wanted to get pregnant and have children. Well, it became very clear to us well into our marriage that we were never going to have kids. It was impossible for us to have children. And it was devastating, right? Because she thought, this is who I am. And so what happened in that is she kept praying, God, I want to be a mom. I want to be a mom. And eventually, God led us towards the area of adoption, which has been incredibly wonderful and satisfying. And so sometimes, even when you do hear a no, what is the core that was in there that God can still bring life to? What's the thing about that really mattered to you that can be fulfilled some other way? So here's the simple step to practice with this video. Sit down and make your list. Here are the things that I think are on my knock knock list right now. Here are the things that I think I could talk to you every day about these things and keep coming back and not give up until you say yes. And I will not take no for an answer on these things. And see how that shifts the posture of your conversations with God. Who am I to talk with God? Just do whatever you think is right, to God, this is who I am. And this is what my life is all about. And here's how I want you to empower me in this. And see how much that impacts the sense of connection and camaraderie and partnership that you feel with God. Simple steps. Practice, practice, practice. That's what Heart Tools is all about.